Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, true happiness always seems just out of reach? Or maybe you've wondered why, despite having everything you need, you still feel empty inside. Why does happiness feel so elusive to so many of us, even when life is good? We often look for happiness in the wrong places, through achievements, possessions, or approval from others. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what if the key to happiness isn't out there, but inside us? Imagine waking up every day feeling peaceful, content, and free from worry. Doesn't that sound amazing? But how do we get there? The truth is, there are a lot of things that we must ignore in order to find true happiness. In today's world, we're bombarded with distractions, pressures, and desires that pull us away from inner peace. What if we told you that ignoring certain things that you might think are essential, could be the secret to living a truly fulfilling life? On this journey, we're going to explore the wisdom of Buddhism, which teaches us how to quiet the noise in our lives and uncover the lasting happiness that comes from within. But first, let's dive into something important, your mindset. Do you want to continue chasing happiness in the same old way? Or are you ready to break free and discover the true path to contentment? Welcome to Wisdom Woven. This channel is dedicated to bringing you practical advice and timeless wisdom that will transform the way you live and think. Here, we focus on simple but profound teachings that can help you live a life of peace, balance, and joy. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. So please, like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring more wisdom to people like you. In the next parts of this video, we'll dive deep into how ignoring certain things can lead you to the happiness you've been searching for. Stay with us as we explore these life-changing insights and begin your journey to a happier, more peaceful life. The illusion of control. Let me ask you this. How many times have you found yourself trying to control everything around you? The people, the situations, the outcomes. We all do it. We spend so much of our time trying to shape our world to fit our desires, thinking that if we can just control enough of it, we will finally be happy. But here's the truth. We can't control everything. And that's okay. In Buddhism, there is a concept called impermanence. It means that everything in life is constantly changing. Every moment, every feeling, every thought, it all comes and goes. And yet, we try to cling to things as if we can hold them still forever. We try to control our circumstances, people's actions, and even the future itself. But what happens when things don't go as planned? We get stressed, frustrated, and disappointed. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're waiting for a bus. You're running late, and the bus is nowhere in sight. You keep checking your watch, pacing back and forth, trying to will the bus to come faster. You think, if I keep focusing on it, the bus will arrive. But the bus doesn't come faster just because you're obsessing over it. All your efforts, all your control, amount to nothing. And now, not only are you still waiting, but you're also upset and anxious. This is what happens when we try to control things that are beyond our control. We waste our energy, lose our peace, and create suffering for ourselves. The truth is, life doesn't always go the way we want it to. People don't behave the way we expect them to. And situations are not always in our favor. But this doesn't mean we should feel helpless or frustrated. It means we need to accept the flow of life as it is. When we learn to let go of the need to control everything, we open ourselves up to peace. Instead of fighting against the current of life, we begin to move with it. Imagine trying to swim against a strong river. No matter how hard you try, it will push you back. But if you stop fighting the current and allow it to guide you, you'll find it much easier to move forward. This doesn't mean we stop taking action or stop making decisions. We can still make choices, work hard, and plan for the future. But what we must stop doing is obsessing over the outcome. We need to trust that the universe has its own way of unfolding things, and that we don't need to control every little detail. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and suffering. In Buddhism, one of the core teachings is the idea of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means understanding that some things are simply out of our hands. And once we accept that, we can let go of the constant need to control. Imagine how much lighter you would feel if you stopped trying to force things to happen the way you want them to. How much less stress would you have if you simply allowed life to unfold naturally? But how do we learn to accept the things we can't control? The answer lies in mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present in the moment, observing things as they are, without judgment or attachment. When you're mindful, you start to notice how often you try to control things that are beyond your reach. And as you become more aware of this, you can begin to let go. You don't need to hold on to every thought or expectation. You don't need to chase after things that are not meant for you. Here's an exercise for you. The next time you find yourself stressing over something you can't control, whether it's the weather, the actions of others, or the outcome of a situation, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, I cannot control this, and that's okay. In that moment, feel the relief. Feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. Allow yourself to surrender to the flow of life. When you practice this regularly, you will find that your life becomes more peaceful. You will stop getting caught up in the chaos of trying to control every aspect of your existence. Instead, you will start to experience a sense of freedom because you no longer feel responsible for the things that are beyond your control. And here's the most beautiful part. When you let go of the need to control everything, you actually start to gain more control over your inner world. You become less reactive, less anxious, and more at peace with yourself. The more you accept the things you cannot control, the more you realize that the only thing you truly have control over is your own mind. The next time you feel overwhelmed by a situation that's outside of your control, remind yourself that it's okay to let go. Trust that things will unfold as they're meant to, and that you don't need to carry the burden of controlling everything. Happiness doesn't come from controlling the world around you. It comes from embracing life as it is, with all its uncertainties and imperfections. So, how can we apply this lesson in our daily lives? The key is to shift our perspective. Instead of focusing on what you can't control, focus on what you can. You can control your response, your attitude, and your actions. You can control how you choose to react to challenges. By shifting your focus away from the uncontrollable and onto what you can influence, you begin to regain your sense of peace and power. It's also important to remember that life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Just when you think you have everything figured out, something changes. And that's okay. Life is not meant to be a perfectly controlled, predictable experience. It's meant to be fluid, dynamic, and ever-changing. When you embrace the unpredictability of life, you open yourself to new opportunities, new lessons, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. To truly understand the power of letting go of control, think of it this way. Imagine trying to hold onto a flower in a field, desperately trying to stop the wind from blowing it away. The more you grip it tightly, the more the petals fall apart. But if you let go, if you allow the flower to be carried by the wind, it remains whole and beautiful. When you stop holding on so tightly, life will unfold in ways you never imagined. In the next part, we'll explore another aspect of happiness, the dangers of comparison. But for now, reflect on how letting go of control can change the way you experience life. Let it be your first step towards true happiness, letting go of external validation. In today's world, it's so easy to get caught up in seeking approval from others. We measure our worth based on what people think of us, whether it's our friends, family, or even strangers on social media. But let me ask you this. What if happiness didn't depend on how others see you? What if the approval you seek from outside could actually be the very thing standing in the way of your inner peace? Buddhism teaches us that true happiness comes from within. When we rely on the approval of others to feel good about ourselves, we are giving away our power. We are letting other people decide how we should feel. But the moment we stop seeking approval from outside and start valuing ourselves, that's when true freedom begins. This is the heart of what Buddhism teaches, to look inward for validation, not outward. Think about it. When was the last time you did something just for yourself, without worrying about what others might think? It might be difficult, because we've been conditioned to constantly seek external validation. Whether it's wanting praise for our work, compliments about our appearance, or approval from family and friends, we often shape our actions around what we think others will like or appreciate. But here's the truth. Seeking approval from others is like chasing a moving target. No matter how much praise you receive, it never feels quite enough. You might feel good for a moment, but soon, you're back to feeling like you need more validation to stay happy. And in this cycle, we lose touch with who we really are. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is a powerful reminder that we should focus on self-love and self-compassion. When we stop waiting for others to give us permission to feel good about ourselves, we begin to experience true happiness. The approval we seek from outside is often fleeting, but the peace we find within is enduring. To understand this more clearly, let's take a simple example. Imagine you've just completed a big project or done something great at work. You're waiting for that compliment, that pat on the back. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. If you don't get the praise you were hoping for, how do you feel? Disappointed? Frustrated? That's because your happiness was tied to someone else's opinion. But if you had done the work with the mindset that you were doing it for yourself, not for approval, your happiness would not be dependent on others. One of the most liberating things you can do is to give up the need for external validation. When you stop seeking approval, you open the door to real, lasting happiness. You stop measuring your worth based on someone else's standards. Instead, you begin to see that your value comes from who you are, not from what others think of you. This shift in mindset is not easy, especially in a world that constantly pushes us to compare ourselves to others. But remember, comparison is a trap. The Buddha taught that attachment to desires and external validation only leads to suffering. When we stop comparing ourselves to others, we start to experience peace. We stop measuring our worth against a never-ending list of external standards, and instead, we measure our value from within. When you let go of the need for approval, you free yourself from the chains of judgment. You stop worrying about fitting into a mold that doesn't serve you. And most importantly, you stop allowing others to dictate how you should feel about yourself. In Buddhism, this is called self-liberation. It's the freedom that comes from understanding that you are enough just as you are. You don't need anyone's approval to be happy. Think about how much energy you spend seeking validation. What if you could use that energy for something else, something that truly matters to you? What if you could redirect that energy toward personal growth, learning, and developing your own sense of purpose? The moment you stop seeking validation from others, you free up that energy to focus on what truly brings you joy and fulfillment. This isn't to say that we should never care about what others think. Relationships and connections with others are important, and feedback can help us grow. But the difference is in the mindset. When your happiness is no longer dependent on others' approval, you will feel more confident in your own decisions, and you will start to build relationships based on authenticity rather than the need for validation. The next time you feel the urge to seek approval from someone, pause and ask yourself, do I need their approval to feel good about myself? The answer will likely be no. In fact, the more you start to trust yourself and your own decisions, the less you will feel the need to seek validation from the outside world. One powerful practice in Buddhism to help you with this is called mindful self-reflection. It's a simple practice where you take a few moments each day to reflect on your actions and thoughts, without judgment. Instead of thinking about what others might say or think, you reflect on your actions and evaluate them based on your own values and goals. This helps you become more self-aware and less reliant on outside opinions. As you continue to let go of the need for external validation, you will notice a shift in how you approach life. You'll become less affected by the opinions of others, more confident in your own choices, and more focused on living a life that aligns with your true values. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but with patience and practice, you will begin to experience a deeper sense of peace and happiness. The road to true happiness is not about pleasing others or getting their approval. It's about looking within, understanding your own worth, and living a life true to yourself. In Buddhism, this is known as the path of inner peace. The more you let go of external validation, the closer you get to this state of peace. To truly embrace this path, start by noticing when you seek validation from others. Take small steps to break the habit. Instead of waiting for someone to compliment you, give yourself a compliment. Instead of looking for praise, acknowledge your own achievements. Over time, you will build a strong foundation of self-love and confidence. Remember, happiness doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from knowing who you are and being at peace with yourself. When you let go of the need for approval, You open the door to a deeper, more lasting happiness that can never be taken away. This is the power of self-acceptance, and it's a gift that only you can give yourself. Let go of the need for external validation and watch as your happiness grows, unshaken by the opinions of others. This is the essence of true freedom, letting go of external validation. Many of us spend our lives seeking approval from others. We crave validation, whether it's from our friends, family, coworkers, or even strangers on social media. This constant need for external validation often shapes how we feel about ourselves. We work harder, act differently, or dress in a certain way, all in the hope that someone will recognize us, praise us, or accept us. But in reality, this need for approval can rob us of our happiness and peace. Let's think about it for a moment. How often have you felt the urge to impress someone, only to feel empty afterward, like the validation you received didn't last long enough? This feeling arises because external validation is temporary and unreliable. It depends on other people's opinions and doesn't come from within you. The more we rely on others to define our worth, the more we lose touch with who we truly are. Buddhism teaches us that the path to happiness is not found in seeking approval from others, but in cultivating self-acceptance. The moment we stop seeking validation from the outside world and start recognizing our own value, we begin to unlock a deeper sense of peace. Buddha himself emphasized the importance of understanding that our worth is inherent, not dependent on the opinions or judgments of others. Imagine for a moment how freeing it would be to wake up every day knowing that you are enough just as you are. No need to prove yourself to anyone. No need to change who you are to fit someone else's expectations. Just being true to yourself and knowing that you don't need external validation to feel complete. It's important to realize that seeking approval from others is not only exhausting, but it also leaves us vulnerable. When you place your self-worth in the hands of others, you become at the mercy of their moods, opinions, and judgments. One day, they may praise you, but the next day, they may criticize you. The cycle becomes never-ending, and your happiness always feels like it's on the edge, dependent on someone else's views. Buddhism offers a powerful solution to this. It encourages self-compassion and mindfulness, which help us recognize our true nature. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts without getting attached to them. We begin to understand that we are not our thoughts, nor are we defined by the approval or disapproval of others. When we shift our focus inward, we start to build self-confidence and inner peace that isn't reliant on outside forces. Letting go of the need for validation doesn't mean we stop caring about others or their opinions. It simply means that we stop allowing their approval to dictate how we feel about ourselves. Instead of seeking approval, we begin to focus on personal growth, learning, and cultivating a deeper understanding of our own needs and desires. We start listening to our own voice rather than constantly looking for reassurance from others. You might be wondering, how can I start letting go of this need for validation? The first step is to become aware of the patterns in your life where you seek approval. Do you find yourself changing your actions, appearance, or beliefs just to fit in or to gain approval from someone else? Pay attention to those moments and ask yourself why you feel the need to seek that validation. Is it because you're truly expressing yourself, or is it because you're trying to meet someone else's expectations? Once you become more aware, the next step is to practice self-acceptance. This means embracing your strengths and weaknesses, your successes and failures, without judgment. Remember, you are a unique individual with your own experiences, your own journey, and your own purpose. Your worth does not depend on fitting into someone else's idea of who you should be. It can be challenging at first, but with practice, you'll begin to notice a shift in your mindset. Instead of constantly looking outward for approval, you'll start to look inward. You'll recognize your own worth, and you'll feel more grounded, confident, and at peace. As you continue to cultivate self-acceptance, you'll find that your happiness is no longer dependent on others. You will feel more content in your own skin, and your interactions with others will be more genuine and authentic. Let's take a moment to reflect on a simple example. Think of a time when you did something that you truly enjoyed, something that made you happy, but no one else seemed to notice or care. How did that make you feel? Did you feel disappointed because no one else gave you praise? Or did you feel content knowing that you did something that mattered to you? The key to lasting happiness is to find joy in what you do for yourself, rather than doing things just to please others. In Buddhism, this principle is known as inner contentment. It is the idea that true happiness comes from within, and it's a happiness that isn't shaken by outside circumstances. When you stop depending on others to make you feel good about yourself, you start to realize that happiness is something you create from within. And this inner happiness, unlike external validation, lasts and grows over time. You might still have doubts. But what if I don't get the recognition I deserve? You may ask. What if I need feedback or approval to feel like I'm on the right track? It's natural to desire recognition for our efforts, but we must understand that validation is fleeting. If we rely on it to measure our worth, we will always be chasing something that is impossible to hold on to. True self-worth doesn't come from others. It comes from understanding and accepting ourselves, flaws and all. By letting go of the need for external validation, we open up space for self-love, compassion, and acceptance. We become our own source of encouragement and strength, no longer waiting for someone else to tell us we're enough. And in doing so, we create the conditions for real, lasting happiness to flourish in our lives. The Buddha taught us that the root of suffering is attachment. When we attach our happiness to the approval of others, we create suffering for ourselves. But when we release this attachment and find validation within, we experience true peace. By letting go of external validation, we are not rejecting others or their opinions, but instead, we are freeing ourselves from the constant need to seek approval. We begin to live more authentically and with a greater sense of freedom. In the end, happiness doesn't lie in seeking approval. It lies in accepting ourselves fully, in embracing who we are, and in recognizing that we are worthy of love and happiness without needing anyone else's permission. Detachment from materialism. In our world today, it's easy to think that happiness comes from what we own. We live in a society that constantly encourages us to buy more, own more, and display more. From the latest gadgets to the most fashionable clothes, we are taught that material things are a measure of our success and our worth. But what if this constant chase for more is actually standing in the way of our true happiness? Buddhism teaches us an important lesson about materialism. It tells us that everything we own, everything we strive to possess, is temporary. No matter how much we acquire, these things will eventually fade away or lose their value. This truth is often difficult to accept, especially when we live in a world that constantly tells us to keep seeking the next thing that promises to bring us happiness. But when we focus too much on material wealth, we begin to tie our happiness to things that are fleeting. Let's think about it for a moment. Have you ever bought something only to feel excitement for a little while, but then the excitement fades? The new car, the shiny phone, or the designer clothes. At first, they bring joy, but soon, that joy is replaced with the desire for something new. This cycle of constant wanting is known as desire in Buddhist teachings, and it's one of the key reasons why we feel unhappy. Desire pulls us away from peace and keeps us always seeking, but never finding true satisfaction. Materialism creates a false sense of security. We often think that the more we have, the safer we are, but true safety and peace come from within. When we look for happiness in things, we start relying on them to feel good about ourselves. But what happens when those things break, get old, or become less valuable? Our sense of self-worth crumbles along with it. That's because our identity becomes tied to our possessions, and this is where the problem begins. Buddhism teaches us the importance of detachment. This doesn't mean that we should give up everything we own or live in poverty. It simply means that we shouldn't let our possessions define us. We can appreciate and enjoy the things we have, but we should not become attached to them. When we detach from materialism, we free ourselves from the constant cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. We begin to experience a deeper sense of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. Think of the story of a Zen monk who had nothing but a simple robe, a bowl, and a walking stick. He didn't own much, but he was content. His happiness didn't come from the things he had, but from the freedom he felt in not being bound to them. He could walk anywhere, live anywhere, and feel at home wherever he went because his happiness didn't depend on the possessions he held. In today's world, it might seem impossible to live without the constant pursuit of more, but the truth is, The less we focus on material things, the more space we create for true happiness. When we stop chasing after the latest trends and possessions, we begin to connect more deeply with the world around us. We find joy in the simple things, like a beautiful sunrise, a kind word from a friend, or a quiet moment of reflection. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is that we are not our possessions. Our true essence is not found in what we own, but in who we are. By detaching from materialism, we return to our true nature, which is free, content, and full of peace. When we stop identifying ourselves with what we have, we can finally experience a deep, lasting joy that doesn't rely on anything outside of ourselves. But let's be clear, detachment doesn't mean living a life of neglect or denial. It doesn't mean you should stop enjoying the things that bring you comfort and pleasure. The key is to enjoy them without becoming dependent on them. The car you drive, the house you live in, the clothes you wear, these are all wonderful, but they are not the source of your happiness. Happiness comes from within, and when we detach from the need to possess more, we make room for this inner happiness to grow. This idea is beautifully illustrated in the Buddhist practice of mindfulness. By being present in the moment, we begin to see that happiness doesn't lie in the things we're chasing, but in the experience of simply being. When we are mindful, we realize that we don't need more to be happy. We already have everything we need within us. Detachment also means recognizing that nothing lasts forever. We live in a world of constant change, and all material things will eventually wear out or fade away. When we hold on too tightly to these things, we set ourselves up for disappointment and loss. But when we learn to let go and appreciate what we have without clinging to it, we experience freedom. We are no longer chained to the cycle of desire and disappointment. Instead, we can live in the present moment, fully appreciating what is, rather than constantly yearning for what is not. It's important to remember that materialism doesn't just refer to physical possessions. It can also refer to the pursuit of status, power, and recognition. Many people chase after these things because they believe that they will bring happiness, but in truth, these are just another form of attachment. When we rely on external validation to feel good about ourselves, we give away our power and our happiness. True contentment comes from within, not from the approval of others. Buddhism teaches that happiness is an inside job. It's about letting go of the things that tie us to the outside world and focusing on the peace that lies within us. When we detach from materialism, we begin to see the world in a new light. We realize that the things we once thought were essential are not as important as the peace and joy we can cultivate within ourselves. If you're wondering how to start letting go of materialism, it's simple. Begin by examining your desires. Ask yourself why you want certain things. Are they truly necessary for your happiness, or are you chasing them because society tells you that you should? Practice gratitude for what you already have. The more you focus on the abundance in your life, the less you will feel the need to seek out more. As you move forward, try to embrace simplicity. Simplify your surroundings, your habits, and your mindset. The less clutter you have in your life, the more space you create for peace and happiness. This doesn't mean you have to give up everything, but it means letting go of the things that weigh you down and focus on what truly matters. When you begin to detach from materialism, you will feel a shift in your life. You'll feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. You'll discover that happiness isn't something you need to chase. It's something that comes naturally when you stop seeking it in the wrong places. The more you let go, the more you will receive. Not in material things, but in peace, joy, and contentment. In the end, detachment from materialism is not about rejecting the world around us, but about embracing a deeper connection with the world within us. When we stop chasing things, we find that we already have everything we need to be truly happy. Releasing negative emotions. In our journey through life, we all face moments of anger, frustration, sadness, and disappointment. These emotions can feel overwhelming at times, taking control of our thoughts and actions. But what if I told you that these negative emotions are like heavy rocks we carry with us? The more we hold on to them, the heavier they become, and the harder it is to move forward. In Buddhism, there's a powerful teaching about how to release these emotions so that they don't control us anymore. This teaching is the key to living a lighter, more peaceful life. We are taught to understand that emotions are temporary. They rise, They stay for a while, and they pass. They are not permanent, and they do not define who we are. However, many of us make the mistake of clinging to these emotions. We hold on to our anger from a disagreement with a friend, our sadness from a loss, or our fear of the future. We replay these moments in our minds, creating a cycle of negativity. The more we focus on them, the more we strengthen their grip on our hearts and minds. But releasing these negative emotions isn't about ignoring them or pretending they don't exist. It's about acknowledging them without attachment. Think of it like holding a cup of hot tea. If you keep holding it in your hand, it will burn you. But if you set it down, it no longer harms you. The same applies to your emotions. When we allow ourselves to feel them fully, without judgment, and then let them go, we free ourselves from their burden. It is this act of release that creates space for peace and happiness to enter our lives. Buddhism teaches us the importance of mindfulness and awareness. Being mindful means observing our emotions as they arise, without getting swept away by them. Imagine you're standing by a river, watching the water flow. The water represents your emotions, constantly moving and changing. Instead of jumping into the river and getting carried away, you choose to watch it from the shore. You acknowledge that the water is flowing, but you remain separate from it, observing it calmly. This is the essence of releasing negative emotions, allowing them to flow without clinging to them. The practice of letting go of negative emotions also involves forgiveness, both of others and ourselves. Forgiveness is not about excusing someone's behavior or forgetting the hurt they caused. It's about freeing yourself from the pain and anger that hold you hostage. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. When you forgive, you release yourself from the chains of bitterness and you open your heart to healing. It's a powerful step in the journey toward emotional freedom. But how do we forgive when the hurt feels so deep? The first step is to recognize that everyone, including ourselves, is imperfect. We all make mistakes. In Buddhism, there is a deep understanding of human imperfection. We are all on our own journey, and sometimes people act out of their own pain and suffering. When you begin to see others with compassion, you understand that their actions are often a reflection of their own struggles. This shift in perspective allows you to forgive, not for their sake, but for your own peace of mind. Another aspect of releasing negative emotions is understanding that holding on to them creates more suffering for us. The more we dwell on our anger or sadness, the more it affects our well-being. It clouds our judgment, it affects our relationships, and it drains our energy. The Buddha taught that attachment to negative emotions leads to suffering. When we learn to let go, we stop creating more suffering for ourselves. Releasing negative emotions isn't about suppressing them. It's about creating a space where we can experience them without being consumed by them. One powerful way to release negative emotions is through meditation. Meditation allows us to sit quietly, breathe deeply, and observe our emotions without attachment. When we meditate, we become aware of the thoughts and feelings that arise, but we do not judge them or identify with them. We simply observe. Over time, this practice helps us to develop emotional resilience. We learn that our emotions do not define us. We are not our anger. We are not our sadness. We are not our fear. We are simply beings experiencing these emotions in the moment, and just as quickly as they arise, they can fade away. In Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness also helps us release negative emotions. Mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we become more aware of the thoughts and feelings that arise within us, but we do not react impulsively to them. Instead of getting angry when someone cuts us off in traffic, for example, we can practice mindfulness by acknowledging the anger without letting it control us. We can take a deep breath, let the emotion pass, and choose not to let it ruin our day. It's important to note that releasing negative emotions is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. Every day, we are presented with new opportunities to let go of negativity. Some days, it may be easier than others. Some days, the emotions may feel overwhelming. But with practice, we become more skilled at recognizing when we're holding on to something that no longer serves us. We can choose, in that moment, to release it and return to a state of peace. The path to emotional freedom is not always easy, but it is always worth it. When we learn to release negative emotions, we create more space for joy, love, and compassion. We stop allowing the past to dictate our present and future. We stop letting our emotions control us. Instead, we take control of our emotional well-being. In the words of the Buddha, you will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger. It is not the emotions themselves that cause suffering, but our attachment to them. When we release them, we open ourselves to a life of peace and happiness. So, if you find yourself holding on to anger, fear, or sadness, take a moment to pause and breathe. Acknowledge these emotions, but do not allow them to define you. Let them pass like clouds in the sky, and make room for the light of peace to shine through. Release the negative emotions that weigh you down, and watch how your life begins to transform. When you let go, you make space for a life of greater joy and freedom. The trap of overthinking. Overthinking, it's something we all experience. We spend countless hours in our minds, replaying situations, wondering what could have been different, imagining future problems, and questioning our every choice. Overthinking often feels like a never-ending cycle, a storm that seems impossible to escape. But what if I told you that overthinking is one of the main reasons why happiness seems so far away? What if the key to a peaceful mind lies in simply stopping this constant stream of unnecessary thoughts? In our daily lives, we often find ourselves trapped in this mental maze. You think about a conversation you had hours ago and wish you had said something differently. Or you stress over an upcoming event, imagining every possible outcome and worrying about all the things that could go wrong. But the truth is, most of the things we worry about in these moments never even happen. We spend so much time building up scenarios in our minds, yet reality often turns out to be much less frightening than we anticipated. Buddhism teaches us that our minds, when left unchecked, can lead us into endless cycles of overthinking. The Buddha talked about how our minds are like monkeys, jumping from one thought to another, never staying still. We create unnecessary suffering by overthinking things that are beyond our control and by holding on to thoughts that don't serve us. This constant mental chatter only keeps us from being fully present in the here and now. Take a moment and think about your own life. How many times have you overthought a situation? Perhaps it was an important decision you had to make, or a conversation that didn't go as planned. The more you dwell on it, the more it grows in your mind. What you fail to realize is that the more energy you give to these thoughts, the more you allow them to control you. Overthinking also leads to a feeling of being stuck. When you're constantly caught up in your thoughts, it becomes difficult to take action or move forward. You end up paralyzed, unable to make decisions or take risks because your mind is consumed with doubts and fears. The beauty of life, however, lies in taking action, embracing uncertainty, and stepping out of your comfort zone. But overthinking traps you in the past or future, never allowing you to experience the present moment. To break free from this trap, it's important to recognize the patterns of overthinking and learn to release them. Buddhism encourages mindfulness, being aware of the present moment without judgment. When you find yourself overthinking, stop and take a deep breath. Remind yourself that you cannot control everything, and most of the things you worry about are not worth the mental energy. The goal is not to stop thinking altogether, but to shift your focus from unproductive thoughts to those that bring peace and clarity. One powerful technique taught in Buddhism is meditation. Meditation trains the mind to become still and focused. By regularly practicing mindfulness, you can learn to detach from your thoughts and observe them from a distance. This helps you gain control over your mind rather than letting your mind control you. When you meditate, you become aware of the constant chatter in your head and can choose to let go of it. Instead of allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by your thoughts, you can simply observe them without attachment. Another technique is the practice of right thinking. In Buddhism, this is one of the elements of the Eightfold Path, a guide to living a life of wisdom and compassion. Right thinking means directing your thoughts in a positive and constructive way. It involves recognizing when your thoughts are leading you down a path of negativity or overanalysis and choosing to redirect them toward peace, acceptance, and clarity. By practicing right thinking, you begin to filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters. It's also important to accept that life is uncertain. When you overthink, it's often because you want to control everything and predict every possible outcome. But the reality is that life is full of uncertainty, and that's okay. It's okay not to know what's going to happen next. Accepting uncertainty frees you from the burden of overthinking and allows you to experience life as it comes, with all its surprises and challenges. Overthinking also stems from a fear of making mistakes. We fear that one wrong decision will ruin everything. But in reality, mistakes are a natural part of life. They are opportunities for growth and learning. The Buddha himself said, "The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." When you release your fear of mistakes, you free yourself from the endless cycle of overthinking. You give yourself permission to fail, knowing that every experience, good or bad, is a stepping stone toward greater wisdom and understanding. So, how can we break free from the trap of overthinking? The first step is awareness. Notice when your mind starts to spiral. Become aware of the thoughts that are causing you stress and anxiety. Recognize them for what they are, just thoughts. They are not facts, and they do not define you. By simply acknowledging your thoughts without getting caught up in them, you can begin to create space between yourself and the mental noise. The second step is to practice mindfulness. When you feel your mind racing, stop and focus on your breath. Breathe in slowly, hold for a moment, and then exhale gently. This simple act of focusing on your breath grounds you in the present moment and calms the mind. You can also practice mindfulness in your everyday activities. Whether you're eating, walking, or even washing dishes, bring your full attention to the task at hand. This helps you stay rooted in the present and prevents your mind from wandering into unnecessary thoughts. The third step is to embrace the impermanence of life. Everything in life is constantly changing, and nothing lasts forever, neither the good nor the bad. This truth is central to Buddhist teachings. When you accept that everything is temporary, you can let go of the need to control every detail. You can let go of your attachment to outcomes and trust that whatever happens, you will be okay. Finally, be kind to yourself. Overthinking often arises from self-criticism and the desire to be perfect. But perfection is an illusion. You are human, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not have all the answers. Treat yourself with compassion and give yourself the grace to be imperfect. When you stop judging yourself so harshly, you will find that your mind becomes much quieter and more at peace. Overcoming overthinking is not an overnight process. It takes time, patience, and practice. But with each small step, you will begin to free yourself from the mental clutter that holds you back. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you will begin to experience the peace and clarity that come with letting go of unnecessary thoughts. When you stop overthinking, you open the door to a life of freedom, joy, and true happiness. So, let go of the need to control every thought, every situation, and every outcome. Embrace the present moment and watch as your mind becomes calmer, your life becomes clearer, and your happiness becomes more profound. Freedom from toxic relationships. In life, we encounter many different people. Some bring joy and positivity, while others, unfortunately, bring negativity and harm. Toxic relationships are those that drain us, pull us down, and take away our peace. These relationships can be with friends, family, coworkers, or even strangers. The key to finding happiness and peace in life lies in recognizing these toxic influences and learning to free ourselves from them. It's not always easy, but it is possible, and it starts with understanding what makes a relationship toxic in the first place. A toxic relationship is one where the other person consistently brings negativity into your life. It could be through manipulation, criticism, emotional abuse, or selfish behavior. Sometimes, we get so used to these patterns that we don't even recognize how harmful they are. It's easy to overlook the impact a toxic relationship can have on our well-being. But if you constantly feel drained, anxious, or hurt after spending time with someone, it's a sign that something needs to change. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is a major source of suffering. When we become too attached to people, we lose sight of our own happiness and peace. We may feel guilty or responsible for other people's feelings, or we may fear being alone or losing relationships that we've had for a long time. However, the truth is that we don't need toxic relationships in our lives. These attachments only hold us back from achieving the true freedom and happiness we deserve. The first step in freeing yourself from a toxic relationship is to recognize it for what it is. This requires honesty with yourself. Ask yourself, how does this relationship make me feel? Does it bring out the best in you? Or does it make you feel worse about yourself? Does it empower you? Or does it make you feel small and insignificant? If it's the latter, then it's time to let go. It's important to remember that letting go of a toxic relationship doesn't mean that you stop caring about the person. It simply means that you are choosing to prioritize your own mental and emotional well-being. Sometimes, this might mean setting boundaries, cutting off contact, or even walking away entirely. It's not easy, and it may be painful, but it's necessary for your growth and peace. One of the main reasons we hold on to toxic relationships is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing someone we've known for a long time, or fear of confrontation. But Buddhism teaches us that fear is a natural emotion, and it's something that we can overcome. By facing our fears and letting go of unhealthy attachments, we create space for healthier, more positive relationships to enter our lives. Think about it. When you hold on to toxic relationships, you're allowing negative energy to take up space in your life. It's like having a cluttered room. There's no room for new, better things to come in because everything is filled with old, unhelpful things. By freeing yourself from toxic relationships, you're making room for more peace, love, and joy to enter. It's also important to remember that not all toxic relationships are obvious. Sometimes, people don't mean to harm us, but their actions still affect us negatively. Maybe they're constantly negative, always criticizing, or putting you down without even realizing it. These subtle toxic behaviors can be just as damaging as more overt ones. Pay attention to how you feel when you're around certain people. Do you feel uplifted and supported, or do you feel drained and judged? In Buddhism, we learn about the concept of right association. The idea is that we should surround ourselves with people who encourage our growth, inspire us, and support our journey toward enlightenment. If someone is consistently bringing you down, they're not the right person to be around. Letting go of toxic relationships is a form of self-care. It's a way to protect your peace and create an environment where you can thrive. Now, let's talk about boundaries. Setting boundaries is one of the most important steps in freeing yourself from toxic relationships. A boundary is simply a line you draw to protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. It's okay to say no, to express your needs, and to walk away from situations or people that are harmful to you. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. When you set a boundary, you're telling the other person, I value myself enough to protect my peace. You might feel guilty at first, especially if the person is someone close to you. But over time, you'll realize that setting these boundaries allows you to live a life that's true to who you are. You deserve to be in relationships that lift you up, not pull you down. If you're struggling to set boundaries, start small. Practice saying no when you feel uncomfortable. Trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. In fact, the more you practice setting boundaries, the easier it will become, and the more empowered you'll feel. In some cases, you might find that the best way to deal with a toxic relationship is to distance yourself or even cut ties completely. This can be especially difficult if it's a family member or someone you've known for a long time. But remember, you are not responsible for their happiness, and you are not obligated to stay in a relationship that harms you. By walking away, you're choosing to prioritize your own well-being, and that's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. As you begin to distance yourself from toxic relationships, you'll likely notice a shift in your energy. You'll feel lighter, more at ease, and more open to positive experiences and people. You'll find that the more you let go of unhealthy attachments, the more you create space for joy and peace to enter your life. Over time, you'll attract healthier relationships that nurture your growth and help you become the best version of yourself. The freedom from toxic relationships isn't just about removing negative influences from your life. It's also about transforming your own mindset. Buddhism teaches us that true happiness comes from within. By letting go of toxic relationships, we stop allowing others to control how we feel. We take back our power and choose to live in a way that supports our own well-being and happiness. As you move forward, remember that the process of freeing yourself from toxic relationships is ongoing. You may encounter new challenges along the way, and there may be moments when old habits resurface. But trust in the wisdom of Buddhism, and know that with each step you take, you are moving closer to a life filled with peace, love, and joy. In the end, the key to happiness isn't about holding on to everyone and everything. It's about recognizing what serves you and what doesn't, and having the courage to let go of what no longer brings you peace. By doing so, you'll create a life that's filled with meaningful, loving relationships, and most importantly, with a sense of inner freedom that no one can take away from you. The power of gratitude and contentment. Sit down, relax, and let us talk about something that has the power to transform your life entirely: gratitude and contentment. These two simple words hold within them the secret to true happiness. You see, we live in a world where everyone seems to be chasing more. More money, more recognition, more success, more possessions. But has this endless pursuit ever truly made anyone happy? Think for a moment about the last time you felt genuinely thankful for something. Maybe it was a warm meal on a cold day, a friend who stood by you, or even just the quiet moment you had to yourself this morning. How did that feel? Peaceful, right? Now imagine if you could feel that way more often. Gratitude isn't about forcing yourself to be happy or ignoring life's challenges. It's about shifting your focus. Instead of always looking at what's missing, you start appreciating what's already there. Imagine a glass of water, half full or half empty. The choice is yours. The water doesn't change. Only your perspective does. Gratitude is learning to see the fullness in that glass. Buddhism teaches us that dissatisfaction comes from craving. Craving is that constant hunger for something else, something more. It whispers, "I'll be happy when," and keeps moving the goalpost. Gratitude, on the other hand, silences that voice. It reminds you, "I already have enough. I already am enough." Contentment is the partner of gratitude. It doesn't mean you give up on dreams or stop striving to grow. It means you find peace in the present moment. Right now, as you sit here, everything you truly need is already within you. Contentment is not about having more. It's about needing less. Let's try a small exercise together. Pause for a moment and think about 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big or dramatic. Small joys are often the most powerful. Maybe it's the roof over your head, the food on your plate, or the person who makes you smile. Feel that sense of thankfulness. That's the power of gratitude at work. One of the greatest teachings of Buddhism is that happiness isn't found in what we own, but in how we view the world. A poor monk with nothing can be happier than a king with everything if the monk has gratitude and the king does not. Gratitude creates wealth, not the kind you count in coins, but the kind you feel in your heart. Contentment doesn't mean you won't face difficulties. Life is unpredictable, and challenges are a part of it. But when you cultivate gratitude and contentment, you stop fighting against life. Instead, you start flowing with it. You find joy even in simple moments, a sunrise, a kind word, or the quiet rhythm of your breath. Now, you might ask, how can I practice gratitude when my life is full of struggles? That's a fair question. Gratitude doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is perfect. It means finding light, even in darkness. Perhaps you've lost something, but can you be grateful for the memories it gave you? Perhaps you're struggling, but can you be thankful for the strength it's building in you? Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it does make the burden lighter. Let me share a simple Zen story. A farmer had only one horse, and one day it ran away. The neighbors came to console him, saying, "What bad luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." Days later, the horse returned, bringing with it several wild horses. The neighbors came again, saying, "What good fortune." The farmer again replied, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son broke his leg while trying to tame one of the wild horses. The neighbors offered their sympathy, and again, the farmer said, "Maybe." Finally, the army came to recruit all the able-bodied young men in the village, but they spared the farmer's injured son. The neighbors exclaimed, "How lucky you are." And as always, the farmer said, "Maybe." The story teaches us that life is unpredictable, but how we react to it defines our happiness. The farmer's calm acceptance comes from contentment and gratitude. Instead of labeling events as good or bad, he simply flowed with life. In your daily life, practice this mindset. Start small. When you wake up, take a moment to be grateful for the gift of a new day. Before you sleep, think of one thing that brought you joy. Gratitude is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. When you're content, you stop competing with others. You no longer envy their lives or feel inadequate. You realize that everyone's journey is different, and yours is uniquely yours. You begin to celebrate what you have instead of mourning what you don't. And that, my friend, is freedom. Remember, the world will always try to convince you that happiness comes from the next big thing. A new phone, a bigger house, a better job. But true happiness comes from the little things you already have. It's in the people who care for you, the moments that make you smile, and the peace you find when you're still. Gratitude and contentment are not just practices, they are ways of living. They allow you to see beauty in imperfection, joy in simplicity, and abundance in what others might overlook. So, take a deep breath, look around, and ask yourself, what can I be grateful for today? The answer might just surprise you. Happiness is not out there waiting for you to find it. It's already here, within you, waiting for you to embrace it. Gratitude opens the door, and contentment invites you to stay. The ultimate key to inner peace and happiness. Welcome, my friend, to the final part of this journey. You have walked a path filled with lessons and insights, each leading you closer to understanding the true nature of happiness. Now, as we come to the end, I want to share the ultimate key, the one thing that, if embraced, will unlock the door to lasting peace and joy in your life. Let us begin with a simple question. What is happiness to you? Is it the fleeting pleasure of a good meal, the excitement of achieving a goal, or the warmth of being loved by someone? These are beautiful moments, yes, but are they truly enough? Think about it. Every joy tied to the outside world fades eventually. The meal ends, the goal is replaced by another, and even the strongest relationships can change. Buddhism teaches us that true happiness is not found in clinging to what is temporary, but in embracing what is eternal. And that eternal truth lies within you. The key, acceptance and letting go. The ultimate key to inner peace and happiness is simple, acceptance and letting go. When you accept life as it is, without trying to control or resist it, you open the door to peace. When you let go of attachments, whether to people, possessions, or even your own expectations, you free yourself from the chains that keep you bound to suffering. But what does this mean in practical terms? It means embracing life as it unfolds. When something painful happens, instead of asking, why me? You say, this too is part of my journey. When joy comes your way, you cherish it, knowing it is a gift but not something to hold on to forever. The nature of suffering. Suffering often arises because we fight against reality. We wish things were different, or we cling to what we cannot keep. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you hold it gently, it stays. Life is like that sand. When you stop clinging, it flows naturally, and you find peace. Practicing the art of letting go. How do you let go? Start small. Reflect on one thing you're holding on to right now. A grudge, a fear, or even a desire. Ask yourself, is this helping me, or is it holding me back? If it's not serving you, take a deep breath and release it. Visualize yourself letting it float away like a balloon in the sky. The power of gratitude. Acceptance is not passive, it's deeply active. One of the most powerful ways to practice it is through gratitude. When you appreciate what you have, even the smallest things, you shift your focus from what's missing to what's already here. Start each day by naming 3 things you're thankful for. It could be the warmth of the sun, the breath in your lungs, or the smile of a stranger. Living in the present moment. The present moment is all we truly have. Yesterday is gone, and tomorrow hasn't arrived. When you live in the now, you free yourself from regrets about the past and worries about the future. Try this. Wherever you are right now, pause. Take a deep breath. Feel the air enter your lungs. Notice the sounds around you, the sensation of your feet on the ground. This moment is enough. Freedom through compassion. Letting go is not just about yourself. It's also about how you treat others. Forgiveness and compassion are powerful tools for inner peace. When you forgive, you release the weight of anger and resentment. When you show compassion, You connect with the world in a way that enriches your soul. Think of someone who has hurt you. Instead of holding on to bitterness, imagine sending them love and kindness. This doesn't mean you condone their actions. It means you choose peace over pain. The illusion of self. One of Buddhism's most profound teachings is the concept of anatta, or no self. This doesn't mean you don't exist. It means that the self you cling to, your identity, is constantly changing. When you realize this, you stop taking life so personally. You understand that everything is interconnected, and this brings a sense of freedom. Trusting the flow of life. When you let go and accept life, you begin to trust its natural flow. Life has its rhythms, times of joy, times of sorrow, times of growth, and times of rest. Just as the seasons change, so do we. Trust that whatever comes your way is part of your journey, and know that you have the strength to face it. Your journey forward. As we conclude, remember that happiness is not a destination. It's a way of being. It's found in the way you approach each moment, each challenge, and each blessing. By practicing acceptance and letting go, you create space for peace and joy to enter your life. Dear friend, you have the power to transform your life. The key has always been within you. All you need to do is open the door. Now, before we part ways, I have one final request. If this journey has touched your heart, if it has sparked even the smallest light within you, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Woven. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. Your support allows us to share this wisdom with more people who are searching for peace and happiness, just like you. May your path be filled with light, your heart with peace, and your mind with clarity. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Until next time, take care and remember, happiness begins with you.